Let's get you up to date on Forge FC. This is Focus on Forge with Anthony Urciuoli on the Forge Audio Network.
Hey, Forge fans, Anthony Urciuoli with you. It's the Forge Audio Network. This is Focus on Forge. Wherever you may be watching and or listening, if you are watching, you can see behind me a nice view of the escarpment. Forge FC wrapping up training following their 1-0 loss to Pacific FC right here at Tim Hortons Field. Still plenty to play for. A match this weekend, the regular season finale for Forge against Halifax. It's at 1 o'clock at Tim Hortons Field. Forge will finish either second, third, or fourth on the CPL table. So a lot could happen between now and Sunday, that finale. Now, for your own bookkeeping, because I know you're just itching to get to a Forge FC playoff match, you will have your opportunity. We just don't know when yet. So here's the scenario. Forge FC finishes in second place. They will play a two-leg semifinal against an opponent yet to be determined. Their home match will be on October 23rd if they finish in second place. If they finish third or fourth, they'll play the first leg of the semifinal, and that will be on October 15th right here at Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton. Now, coming up on this edition of Focus on Forge, we're going to check in with Terran Campbell. He has now hit 100 matches, not all with Forge FC, but in the Canadian Premier League after a very nice little stint there with Pacific where he won a title on this field behind me here. And Terran Campbell, hitting that 100 mark. We're going to hear from him, some of his remarks, maybe check in on his career as a whole as a youngster playing soccer, and if he envisioned himself being in this situation, being a pro and hitting 100. We're also going to hear from our very own Jessica Lisi. She covered the Spark Summit, which was held Wednesday prior to the Forge Pacific match. Now, the Spark Summit was a celebration of sorts of women in sports. It also was a networking event. It was a great turnout. The panel was incredible. You've already heard some of them. Jackie Dory's been on this channel before. She was the moderator. And Andy Petrillo, who many of you will know from One Soccer, also Leafs TV, Raptors TV, CBC. I mean, Hockey Night in Canada. The list goes on. She's done it all. So we're going to check in with Jess and get some coverage of that Spark Summit. But first, Terran Campbell, Forge FC forward. I caught up with him talking about 100 matches, the mark he hit this week. How does it feel to have 100 under your belt?
Yeah, it feels great, it's a big accomplishment. I probably didn't think I'd get to 100 games when I entered this league, so I feel good about it, and it's definitely something I'll look back at.
Do you remember those first years playing soccer? And, can you remember that far back? How old were you?
Yeah, I was about 5 years old. I started when I was really young, just growing up playing with friends and just locally. And I turned out to love it and turned out to play professionally now, so I'm really grateful to be doing what I do.
Did you always play forward?
Yeah, pretty much most of my life. A little bit on the wing, midfield, but for the most part, I've always been up top.
Were you a big kid, or did it take a while?
Yeah, I was a pretty big kid. Kind of had the same size as when I was a little kid.
I think when I didn't see as much of you before you came to Forge, and looking at your size, you look kind of like a number 9 target man, ball in your feet. But as we watched you, a lot of movement off the ball, work rates high, you can play the wing. Has that versatility always been there, or has that kind of grown as you've grown yourself?
Yeah, I think so. We just talked about, I was able to play other positions growing up, for the most part, playing forward and whatnot, but just being in other positions helped me develop my game and be able to learn different scenarios throughout the game.
Is this your first experience living in this part of the country? I knew you grew up out west.
Yeah, it is. First time being on the East Coast.
Yeah. Thoughts on the East Coast versus you don't have to pick a favorite, but is it a big change?
Yeah, it is for sure, but I'm enjoying my time here.
Terran Campbell, the way he plays, a lot of players, it's interesting because you can kind of get a gauge for how they play based on their personalities, and it makes sense that those two things would intersect. For Terran Campbell, though, quiet guy, but very cerebral, methodical, analytical, and it shows up in his game and why he's able to be versatile. Like I said to him, when I saw him in person, I was like, this is a number 9 target man to his core. His size, I mean, not just his height, he's 6 feet tall, which compared to me is a giant. So he is 6 feet tall, but he's just thick. He's a big guy, strong guy, very difficult to get in front of him and to get body position on him. Terran Campbell uses his size effectively, but what you don't realize until you watch him play is that he has the speed. He can play wing. His work rate off the ball is as good as anybody. And he makes his runs, and he works so hard in training and in games, and he brings so much to the table. And it really does kind of reflect his personality. He's not going to be the loudest guy, but there's just a cerebralness to him. He's very calculated, very smart, and still young. 23 years old, Terran Campbell. So a bright future ahead for him. All right, moving along here. A very important event was held and hosted by Forge FC Wednesday night prior to their clash with Pacific FC. Now, it was the Women in Sports match, so it's only fitting that the first ever Spark Summit was held at Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton. Now, the event included a panel of women from professional athletes, front office executives, and sports media personalities speaking about their experiences navigating the world of sports. There was a Q&A session. There's a panel discussion on gender equity in sports business leadership. And, maybe most importantly, at least as important, it was one giant networking event for professional women. Now, I was very fortunate to be able to attend this event, and I can tell you something I learned and something that was spoken about was that men have a role to play in this as well, as far as being a part of the conversation and being supportive and being allies in what is still a very male-dominated world. The event was spearheaded by Forge FC Associate Vice President of Business Operations, Nicole Demers, who is the highest-ranking female executive in the Canadian Premier League. And she provided the opening remarks at the Spark Summit.
And on behalf of all of the Hamilton Sports Group, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you all for joining us here this evening and being a part of the conversation. I'd also like to extend a special thank you to our incredible group of panelists who will be meeting here shortly. And we're excited to have you here in Hamilton at Tim Hortons Field.
Now, the event was hosted by Jacqueline Dory of CBC Sports. Panelists included Deirdre Dion, Olympic medalist and sports media executive, Andy Petrillo, sports broadcaster, and Taylor McIntyre, football coach at McMaster University. Our own Jessica Lisi covered the event, and she was able to sit down and have a chat with Andy Petrillo.
Okay, Andy, just want your general thoughts on the Spark Summit today. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, first of all, I think it's really special that, Forge FC, Hamilton Ticats have come together and just created this summit because there is a want for it. There's a need for it, as proof by the amount of people who were there, right? There's definitely a call by women to continue listening to the stories of women in the industry, women who are continuing to look for allies, who are continuing to look for teammates, to use the sports cliche, where we all just really want to stick together and help one another out. So I think it's really special when you see these types of summits. You wonder, have they kind of like had their day? No, right? At the end of the day, women continue to want to network and hear each other's stories and help each other out. So I think it's really special. And, congratulations on a successful year one.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you could hope for one takeaway from all those women that were watching you up there, what would it be?
I really want them to take away that we are here for one another. And I know it was addressed in the summit that in the past there really has been this token mentality with women because we've had to work so hard to be in, what is described as a male-dominated industry, and that when you make it, when you've gone through the gauntlet, you feel very protective of your spot, and when you see another, woman coming on board, you don't want to help her out. And I really hope that what we've at least shared here tonight is that mentality is changing, and thank goodness it's changing, because however are we going to see women advance in the sports industry if we don't help one another? And and Deidre also brought up a great point where she said, just because I had to struggle and suffer, why do you have to struggle and suffer? It should be my job to at least help make it easier for you. And I thought that was pretty powerful, and I hope that's the main takeaway, is that women are here for one another and that we really do want to see one another succeed.
The Spark Summit was a huge success that provided many takeaways for the women in attendance. Jessica Lisi sat down with one of those women, Danielle.
Okay, Daniela, I just have a couple questions for you. Obviously, you attended the Spark Summit, a super exciting event. So what were your overall thoughts on it?
Overall, I think that a lot of the women, I think that they all had very good things to say, just about being a woman and taking up space in male-dominated fields. I think the biggest takeaway was just being your biggest advocate, and that nobody else is going to advocate for yourself. You're going to have to really push yourself to, even just being a woman in a field like this, you're going to have to push yourself, step outside of your boundaries, and really just take any opportunity that's given to you.
Forge FC so proud to be on the front foot of the Women in Sports match and the Spark Summit. That's going to do it for Focus on Forge. Don't forget Forge's finale of the regular season this Sunday, 1 o'clock, Halifax, making the trip to Hamilton. Tickets available now at forgefc.ca. We will join you soon for the match day preview to get you set for that Halifax match, as well as 3 keys to the match. We'll talk to you soon.
Anthony Urciuoli and Focus on Forge. Subscribe on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts to the Forge Audio Network.